Welcome to meeting number 59, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, also known as the Mighty OGO for anyone new to this committee. Now, pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, January 18, 2023, the committee is meeting on the study of the federal government consulting contracts awarded to McKinsey & Company. We're going to start. We have Mr. Palter. I understand you have a 5-minute opening statement for us, sir.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm pleased to offer some factual context and McKinsey's perspective on its work for the Government of Canada. I've been the managing partner of McKinsey Canada since September 2022. I've been with McKinsey for 28 years, working with Canada's business and civic leaders across a wide range of sectors. We've been active in Canada for over 50 years and have deep roots in this country. We serve 2/3 of Canada's leading companies across all sectors, work closely with leading civic and not-for-profit organizations, and employ 1,000 talented individuals, 90% of whom are proud Canadian citizens. And they take the responsibility of serving our country and communities seriously and with immense care. Our public sector engagements since 2011 are the primary focus of this committee. It's therefore critical to point out that the vast majority of those engagements were the result of publicly tendered, competitive requests for proposals. The proposals we made in response to these requests were independently evaluated and ultimately awarded by public servants based on objective, point-rated technical and pricing criteria. Most of the remaining contracts were awarded through a national master standing offer, with a small number of sole-sourced agreements by the public service. In all cases, it was open to the public service to procure services in these ways pursuant to federal government requirements. McKinsey contracts were awarded based on merit-based criteria used by the public service, not as a result of any relationship at any political level. In the fiscal year ending 2 days from now, the Government of Canada will have spent approximately $25 billion on external consultants, of which McKinsey contracts represented less than 1% of the total spend. Again, McKinsey contracts represented less than 1% of the total amount spent by the government on external consultants. The committee has rightly noted that the volume of our work, as well as the work of other consulting firms, has increased over the last number of years. As the committee has heard from departmental officials, this increase is because the demands placed on the federal government have grown significantly, as has the complexity of the challenges faced by the federal government. McKinsey brings global skills and expertise that complement the public service and produce tangible results for Canadians. As the committee has heard from ministers and senior officials, our expertise is a valuable complement to the talents and efforts of the public service. For example, we brought world-class call center and productivity improvements to Miramichi, New Brunswick, to support our public sector and dramatically increase their efficiency and overall productivity. This is something only a global firm can provide perspective on, and McKinsey has the expertise to do so. Our firm has tremendous regard for Canada's public servants and have always approached our work in a way which seeks to provide significant value to the government. The committee has also focused on our firm's activities outside of Canada. Like any large organization, we are not perfect. And when we have made mistakes, we have learned from them and have made changes. Over the last several years, our firm has made significant changes to our professional standards, client service policies, and risk management. McKinsey is committed to meeting the highest ethical standards. We have been transparent about these changes, and information on these changes is available on McKinsey's global website and has been for several years. We care deeply about the country, and importantly, we seek to do work where we know we can make a difference in the communities where we operate. In closing, we obtained our contracts by responding to the needs of the public sector. We followed the rules. We did very good work, and that work delivered value to Canadians. En conclusion.
In closing, we obtained our contracts by responding to the needs of the public sector. We followed the rules. We did very good work, and that work delivered value to Canadians.
And answer any questions the committee may have at this time. Et merci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poulter. We'll start with 6 minutes with Ms. Cusi.
And thank you, Mr. Poulter, for being here today. I'm sure you saw in the budget yesterday, actually, that the government spent $21.4 billion on outsourced consulting. So it is of significant concern, not only for the official opposition, but for Canadians. And on Friday, I'm sure you saw that this government did release some audit reports on their work with McKinsey. And there were, in fact, some problems with the procurement process relative to the contracts that were awarded to your company at that time. But I'm going to go back now to a previous witness that we had, Mr. Dominic Barton. In documents provided to this committee, we were made aware that Mr. Barton was brought in for a working session with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank in July of 2020. This was after he had left McKinsey and was Canada's ambassador to China at that time. So when Mr. Barton appeared at the committee in February, he claimed he had no involvement with any of the McKinsey contracts with the Government of Canada. Can you tell the committee which contracts McKinsey had with the government since 2015 that Dominic Barton was involved in any way, including as the global managing partner of McKinsey or his employment with McKinsey? And since you've been with the company for more than 2 decades, as you indicated, I'm sure you would have a record of this.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. There are a couple elements there. The first one is I would start by saying that McKinsey adheres to all the policies and the procedures that the federal government requires us to follow. The second I would say is I would let Dominic Barton's testimony to this committee stand. He made his remarks. I don't actually know the specifics of that meeting at the CIBC. I don't know if he was actually there.
Thank you. According to one email regarding McKinsey's working sessions with CIB, the session, which was to include Mr. Barton, was limited to a smaller audience because of one of your partners wanted Mr. Barton to be able to speak freely. What was intended to come out of those discussions that could not be discussed with a wider audience?
Mr. Chair, I am not familiar with that email or the specifics of that email. What I can say is McKinsey takes its obligation to comply with the rules that the federal government applies to all contracts very seriously, and we follow them very seriously.
To your knowledge, was Mr. Barton involved in any contracts? Actually, not even to your knowledge. Was Dominic Barton involved in any contracts with your clients, other clients, after he left McKinsey and was Canada's ambassador to China, Mr. Poulter?
So Mr. Barton left McKinsey in 2018, as indicated in his testimony. He severed his economic relationship by selling his shares at McKinsey as shared with this committee. Mr. Barton was not working with any clients that I am aware of to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, thank you for that information.
I also believe that Mr. Barton had an obligation to the federal government to disclose any conflicts consistent with the policies of the government, and he had to adhere to those.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Poulter, have you or any of your employees met with any ministers of the current government?
I have not personally met with any members of this government. I cannot state definitively whether my colleagues have or have not.
Okay. Have you or your staff ever met with a minister's staff?
As part of normal course delivery of our engagements and contracts, it is typical to engage with the civil service in the delivery of the work, yes.
Okay. Can you be a little bit more specific? Perhaps which ministers or deputy ministers or ADMs from which departments, please, Mr. Poulter?
Mr. Chair, I do not have off the top of my list the specific interactions between McKinsey colleagues. What I can say is I do know that we have an obligation to comply with the rules and the regulations, and we do take that seriously, and we do follow that.
Okay. Well, we found out that wasn't the case on Friday. Unfortunately, someone is at fault. We'll get to the bottom of it, but maybe not today. Have you or employees of McKinsey ever met with the Prime Minister's office?
I have never met with the Prime Minister's office personally. Again, Mr. Chair, I am unable to specifically comment on all members of our firm and whether they have had contact or not.
Okay. Have you had any communication with either Mr. Barton, the Prime Minister's office, or any minister's office regarding our study here at Government Operations Committee?
I have not personally, no.
Okay. Did McKinsey ever meet or communicate with senior members or politicians of the Liberal Party prior to the 2015 election?
Again, Mr. Chair, McKinsey takes its obligation to follow the rules that the government sets out very clearly. It's a difficult question to answer for me because I don't have the specifics. I was not the managing partner of McKinsey Canada at that time, and I do not know the specifics of those elements in question.
Okay. In your opinion, do you think McKinsey was awarded the contract with the Canada Infrastructure Bank because of the work Mr. Barton did on the Economic Advisory Council, even though he was no longer employed with McKinsey?
To the best of my knowledge, the work that McKinsey has won with the government and its agencies and departments is the result of complying with the procurement processes stipulated by the federal government. McKinsey has distinctive capabilities on infrastructure. We are the globally leading firm on infrastructure, so it shouldn't be a surprise that McKinsey is seen in that light.
Thank you, Chair. You know, someone is not telling the truth, because that report that came out on Friday indicates that either someone in one of the two ministers' office who are responsible to this committee or someone at McKinsey is not telling the truth, and we'll get to the bottom of it, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Poulter.
Thank you. That is your time. Mr. Jari, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Poulter. Welcome to our committee. I'm going to ask a lot of rapid questions, and I'm hoping we can get same responses within the same timeline. Can you kindly talk about your role as a managing director since 22? What does your role encompasses?
My role as a managing partner of McKinsey is to oversee our operations. That includes client service, managing our people, managing our operations, managing our compliance, managing our risk, managing adherence to policies and procedures. Thank you.
Can you talk about the sectors, industries, or practices that McKinsey Canada has?
As I indicated in my opening remarks, Mr. Chair, McKinsey works across every sector in Canada. We have clients in oil, gas, banking, insurance, retail, consumer. We work on a variety of issues: strategy, organization, operations, digital, risk management, and the like.
So you also answered the second question I had. So is it fair to say public sector is one of the practice line or one of the verticals that McKinsey is working on?
Yes, that is a fair statement.
Thank you. What kind of service lines McKinsey is providing?
The bulk of McKinsey's work to the Canadian public sector falls into the area of digital transformation and agile transformation.
Thank you very much. What would you say from a number of practitioners, especially partners that you have within Canada, how many of them are allocated to or assigned to the public sector?
That's a slightly challenging question to answer because it's not quite our model. The public sector practice for McKinsey Canada, truthfully, is a relatively small part of our practice. And so if you think about the 1,100 plus people who work for McKinsey Canada, it's a relatively small number of the people that we have.
Can you tell me what is the overall revenue of the Canadian practice?
That is a confidential item. We're a private organization, and that's confidential information.
Okay. Can you tell me the percentage of the public sector revenue as a total percentage of the revenue?
As I indicated in my remarks, our public sector work is a relatively small part of what we do. It's roughly 5 to 7% of our operations here in Canada.
Great. You talked about what McKinsey is known for, aside from the strategy, but specifically within public sector. You said you're known for digital transformation as well as some of the potential outsourcing. Can you share that with us?
Yes. So I'd like to offer an example. So I alluded to work we do in digital transformation. So, for example, we did some work with the Navy. We helped them digitize the process, take a manual process whereby the Navy had to find sailors across the country for rapid deployment onto a ship at a particular port. That was a very labor, manual-intensive process. We helped digitize it, streamline it, and in parallel, we also helped the Navy build their digital skills so that they had digital savvy employees who could take that and apply it to other processes in the Navy.
We heard a lot about Mackenzie's engagement with the government was around benchmarking. Can you decouple benchmarking and what type of activities you do quickly?
Yes. Under the National Master Standing Offer, which is competitively awarded, and it's awarded because an advisory firm has proprietary data sets, we, along with probably 25 or 30 other service providers to the government, have been awarded National Master Standing Offers because of the data set that we have. We have, for example, a unique data set that allows us, it has 2.8 million individual points that allow us to provide a statistical analysis of culture. And that has been used by the federal government to help address some of the culture issues.
Thank you. You talked about a master agreement. In your opening remarks, you talked about that you could basically break down your contracts in the open contract, master agreement, and sole source. And you said a small portion is sole source. Can you give us a sense of the contract that you received or you participated in and you've been granted? How many were open contract? How many were master agreement? How many were sole source?
To the best of my knowledge, roughly 70% of our contracts were awarded through competitive RFPs with multiple bidders. Roughly, I would say 29% were awarded through the National Master Service Offer, and then less than 1% through sole source. And these are contracts with the federal government.
Thank you. With about 30 seconds to go, how would you define your relationship with the government? And do you think there was any favorism as it relates to granting contracts to Mackenzie when it's 70% is open, 29% is master agreement, and 1% is sole source?
I think our relationship with the federal government, first of all, complies with policies and procedures. Second of all, I think the federal government is getting value. Third, I know it's a competitive process because by our own record keeping, we only win 40% of the things that we bid on.
Quickly, I just want to thank Mackenzie for providing all the redacted documents that we asked for. Thank you.
Unredacted, actually. Force a habit. Mrs. Vinola for 6 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair and Mr. Palter. Thank you for coming today. You spoke about the awarding of contracts, and given the revelations that there were not two signatures necessarily on the contracts, and the number of written contracts was less than what was undertaken, and that even McKinsey was paid before the end of a contract, or in any case, before all the goals were met. Can you tell me if you were aware of any of these irregularities?
I am not sure I'm aware of the specifics of the irregularities that you're alluding to. I am not aware of any contract where I'm just not aware of the specifics or the contract in question.
Okay. En fait, c'était.
Well, this was in La Presse, and on French Radio Canada. So perhaps that's not what you read first thing in the morning. Now, there were meetings with McKinsey during the tendering of contracts, and I'd like to know if you were ever asked what language you wanted to deliver what was being asked for.
So I was personally not in any of those meetings, so I can't stipulate whether that question was ever asked and answered. But what I can tell you is McKinsey recognized very clearly that we are a country with 2 official languages. We take that obligation seriously. As I suspect you appreciate, we have a Montreal office. We have about 150 plus employees there. It is a French-speaking office, and we honor the requirements of the federal government to provide service in both languages.
Est-ce qu'à ce moment-là,
In that case, in the contracts, it says that deliverables will be in English and presentations in person will be in English or French if necessary. Do you think that's a problem? Or is that the usual manner of working with these contracts? And my second question is this. Does the government tell you what language the deliverables will be in, or do you determine what language those deliverables will be provided in?
As part of our work with the federal government, we have a requirement to meet the language requirements of the federal government, and so we follow those directly.
donc ce que je comprends,
So from what I understand then, you deliver what you've been asked for. You don't necessarily decide.
Correct. We follow the rules.
merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Il est arrivé à McKinsey
Has it ever happened that McKinsey has had to provide advice to the government of Quebec on, for example, the best way of obtaining health transfers?
Mr. Chair, in response to the question, I'm here in the capacity to answer the questions of this committee about our service to the federal government. I am happy to take those questions.
Yeah, we generally offer very wide questioning on things, so we would appreciate an answer.
So, Mr. Chair, I am not aware of any such request.
Merci.
Thank you. You've worked with Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada on immigration thresholds or levels. Have you ever provided advice on how to reach 100 million immigrants? And have there ever been any consultations or discussions about the unique needs of various regions in Canada, whether that be Quebec, whether that be the Maritimes, the Prairies, or the western part of Canada?
Mr. Chair, McKinsey does not and has not made policy recommendations for the Government of Canada. The work in question as it relates to the IRCC was actually about digitizing processes. We had no input on the issue of policy. And as I also believe the minister responsible for that decision stated to this committee that decision was his and his alone with no involvement from McKinsey.
Monsieur Palter.
Mr. Palter, have you ever had to advise an aviation company on the best way for them to obtain government contracts?
Et lorsque je parle de
And when I'm talking about aviation companies, I'm talking about construction in the aviation industry.
Very brief answer, please, but we'll probably have to come back to this next round.
I am not aware of such work.
Thank you. Mr. Johns, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you for being here today. Can you tell me, you worked alongside Mr. Barton for a number of years, pretty closely?
Mr. Barton and I overlapped very briefly in Toronto. He then moved to Asia. For the vast majority of my career, he was in Asia.
Okay, because he served as an advisor to the Harper government. He stated at the committee here, as well. He also was an advisor to the former finance minister Bill Morneau, and prior to his move to China to serve as Canada's ambassador. Are you aware of whether he had a closer relationship with Prime Minister Harper versus Prime Minister Trudeau?
I have no insight on that question, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Services, in terms of McKinsey, can you talk about what services McKinsey does provide to the government and that can't be performed by public servants and that would be more efficient to outsource?
So McKinsey's work to the federal government is always a complement to the federal government. It's always a response to a need identified by the civil service that they put out into the marketplace, that they procure through either an RFP or the NMSO. One example, as I alluded to previously, is we have a data set. It's a proprietary data set. It's McKinsey's, it's nobody else's. The federal government has determined and the civil service has determined that that is a highly valuable data set to help implement decisions that they have made. Another example of where we've added value, as you heard me talk a little bit about our work on digital transformation, we have helped the federal government hire digital expertise. The government is trying to transform and modernize, and it needs digital capabilities to do that. And a critical part of every contract that we take on with the federal government is helping build those capabilities so they don't have to rely on firms like us going forward.
So, public servants are experts in their work, just like McKinsey is. How do you involve and consult them in terms of when you're working with the federal government?
The nature of our process, McKinsey's particular process with clients, is we always do it together with clients to complement what they are doing and help build upon what they are doing. We help accelerate it, we help improve it, we help refine it, and we bring global best practices to support what they're doing.
Okay. We've seen a huge increase in consulting. Our focus as New Democrats hasn't just been on McKinsey, it's been on the overall, the large $100 million plus club of, expensive consultants that have been growing at at a rate that's 4 times under this government, doubled under the Harper government. So it's gone up tenfold in 10 years, just those 6 companies. It's a significant amount of growth. We heard about from Amanda Clark from Carleton University. I'm sure you're familiar with Amanda. She told us that the public services loss of institutional knowledge and capacity just continues to get worse and eroded as we're seeing consulting go up. So it's a pretty vicious cycle, and apparently the need to outsource, which means you don't end up developing that in-house knowledge and that capability. So the next time an issue comes up or the need comes up, it's not there. The public service isn't there and doesn't have the tools or capacity to do it. So of course it's outsourced again, and it creates that vicious cycle. Can you speak about how McKinsey, like the work you do to actually reduce that loss in terms of jobs in the public service? And specifically, how does McKinsey ensure that knowledge transfer is happening with public servants when government contracts are filled?
Thank you. This is an important question. Outsourcing technically is the movement of people and processes from one organization to another organization and letting the other organization take on that work. McKinsey actually does not provide outsourcing as a service. Our work is intended to respond to the request from the civil service where they are looking for a specific capability that needs to be filled. Again, the example that I will offer is around digitizing. The way we work with the civil service is they have a request to implement a digital transformation. We will help set out the strategy, the roadmap, the technology requirements, the organizational requirements, the capability requirements, help them design, start the execution, help find the people, hire the people, put them in the jobs, train them, and make them capable and stand up so that they can take that skill and roll it to other processes that need to be digitized.
Okay, I appreciate that. So how do you help me please understand and maybe square this up? We saw the Conservative cuts in the public service. We saw them cut at Veterans Affairs. We saw them cut staff and delivered a payroll system that turned out to be a flop with the Phoenix payroll system. And we continue to see outsourcing, like it skyrocketed at the time of cuts to the public service. Can you maybe give me some insight of where this is going? Because we're seeing all of the outsourcing skyrocketing. I imagine companies like yours are investing heavily in research and developments, putting an eye on the prize to grow your relationship with the federal government, because you can't do this kind of volume of business without building infrastructure. Where's it go in terms of where's an end to this in terms of the amount it's going up?
So a couple thoughts. The first one is as I stated previously, McKinsey doesn't do outsourcing work. We haven't partaken in any outsourcing with the federal government. That's not what we do. We provide a complement to the civil service. We upskill, we design, we support execution. We don't take jobs out and take them onto our books. That's not what we do. Never have and won't do that. Where this goes, I don't know, because we're not actually in that business. So I don't have a view on that. And as I stipulated, McKinsey is less than 1% of the trend that you're alluding to.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Poulter. Our time is up. Maybe we can get back to the next round. Mr. Barrett, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Poulter, for being here today. How often does McKinsey lobby government or government officials for the federal government?
McKinsey does not lobby on behalf of clients and takes its obligation to respect and honor the lobbying rules very seriously.
Do you lobby on behalf of yourself? Does McKinsey lobby on behalf of McKinsey to the federal government?
No, McKinsey does not lobby on behalf of McKinsey.
Does anyone lobby the government on behalf of McKinsey?
Nobody lobbies the government on behalf of McKinsey.
So how did McKinsey have those meetings that you indicated previously had occurred between government officials and your company? Were the government called McKinsey first, or did McKinsey initiate contact? So I'm just curious, who initiated the first contact?
So it's a slightly hypothetical question because I don't know the specifics. But what I can say,
well, at some point in time, someone initiated the contact. So certainly that first phone call did happen. How did it happen? Because companies like KPMG and the like would have records of those initial contacts and would also be able to articulate why they're on the lobbying registry.
So what I can say is that conversation between the government and any supplier, any advisor, any provider of goods and service is a normal course business behavior that happens.
Thanks for that. Have you ever, has your organization ever been in contact with the lobbying commissioner, the federal lobbying commissioner?
I don't believe so.
No one from your organization has ever contacted the lobbying commissioner to ensure that you're in compliance with federal lobbying regulations?
Well, we take our obligation to honor the lobbying laws and regulations very seriously. Our compliance function, I suspect, understands our lobbying requirements very seriously and ensures that we adhere to them.
Okay. So is that a no?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that question.
Would you undertake to provide a response in writing to the committee to affirm that your organization has not communicated with the lobbying commissioner's office?
I'm happy to cooperate with the committee in any capacity possible and take that away.
Okay, so that's a yes. You will provide that in writing to the committee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. If I'm going to switch gears, which countries' militaries has McKinsey done work for?
McKinsey's policy about defense work that we apply, and is very important, is that we do not do...
Are you going to include a list, sir?
My answer is going to explain an explanation for who we do and do not serve.
Does it include the names of the countries that you do work for?
McKinsey does not do work with defense agencies for countries that fall below 6 on the EIU Democracy Index.
How do we know, and can you guarantee us, that no information learned from McKinsey's work with Canada's Department of National Defence has ever been shared with foreign states or foreign state-connected businesses? Specifically, do any individuals, analysts, or anyone else employed by McKinsey who works for on contracts for Canada's Department of National Defence, is there any crossover between any work done for any other countries than Canada?
The question about confidential information and client confidential information is a very important question. It is the central tenet of our firm. We've been in business for 100 years working on that tenet. And the fact that more than 2/3 of our clients are longstanding repeat clients would seem to indicate that we're managing that. As it relates to the federal government on this issue, we are required to adhere to all of the federal government requirements about information and information security, and we have invested $600 million in the compliance processes and procedures to ensure that we comply with them.
Thank you, Mr. Poulter. Ms. Thompson, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to committee. How would you characterize your company's relationship with the federal government?
I think our relationship is one where the federal government looks to us for very specific support on specific issues where we have global, world-class expertise that the government is looking for and that they have been unable to find elsewhere.
Thank you. Did McKinsey compete to provide the best service in order to win the contracts? And if so, isn't this how the free market is supposed to work? And if not, then certainly we'd appreciate your comments there as well.
As I stated previously, my best guess is that at least 70% of our work with the federal government has been awarded through the competitive RFP process, where multiple bidders are invited to the process, multiple bidders have to bid, multiple offers are reviewed independently by the civil service, where the civil service is looking for the best combination of expertise and value for money. We've won those vast majority of our contracts through that model, and as I've said, my analysis would suggest we win or we lose 60% of the time. That would seem to me that it is a very competitive and very free market as it pertains to procurement with the federal government.
Thank you. And the next question certainly referenced it, I believe, in the digitalizing government, but I want to still ask is very specific. What benefit does McKinsey and other companies bring to the table when it comes to short-term and specialized requirements in government?
At times, the federal government will reach out to a service provider because they do have a short-term need for very specific and pointed capabilities. I think one of the things that a firm like McKinsey can provide is, with 45,000 people around the world, we likely have the expertise that the government is actually looking for and can muster it to support the government when it needs it.
Thank you. Has McKinsey ever declined to do business with a potential client for ethical reasons?
This is an important question. Yes, McKinsey routinely declines work with clients, and we will continue to decline work with clients. As part of our compliance process, we have a 5-layer screen that every potential client has to pass through. If a client doesn't pass through all 5 screens, we won't take on the work. Now, then you might ask the question, what happens if they pass through the screen? Do they still get to work with McKinsey? And the answer is no. They have to go through another screen for the actual particular type of work in question, and an independent check and balance on the team that could potentially do the work makes the decision whether that's a piece of work that McKinsey should actually take on.
Thank you. And again, it's alluded to, but I want to ask the question. When the government contracts with McKinsey, when that happens, what measures, if any, are in place to ensure that the government information is not shared with other organizations that you have contracts with?
So as I alluded to previously, maintaining client confidential information is the fundamental bedrock of our firm. It is fundamental to absolutely everything we do, and our clients know that we can manage that. We have built world-class technology systems, data management systems, compliance, risk management to make sure that that the information of our clients stays the information of our clients. On top of that, the federal government has very strict requirements that every provider to the federal government has to adhere to. And we adhere to those requirements contractually and as part of our engagement process with the federal government. Before starting work with the federal government, we have an explicit discussion about managing confidential information.
Thank you. How does McKinsey ensure that it contributes to the knowledge transfer to public servants when it's awarded federal contracts?
This is another really important question. There are many different varieties of advisors. McKinsey, as an advisor, believes in helping its clients improve their performance and helping them on their own. So every mandate that we take on, there's an element of it of building skills. And whether that's taking people that we're working with to training programs or bringing training programs to them or exposing them to global best practices or coaching them on the job with experts, it's always a part of our work with our clients to help build their capabilities so they can continue to improve without us.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm afraid that's past our time. Ms. Finola for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to continue along the same lines. That is to say, on training so that public servants are able to take over eventually with those skills. Now, public servants have said that they didn't have the choice but to go ahead with McKinsey. And because of brand, because of what the knowledge of McKinsey, they actually are dependent on these contracts from one to another. Do you not think that there's a contradiction in that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I didn't quite understand the question. Could you ask it again? I'm sorry, I just didn't follow what you were asking.
So on the one hand, you're telling us that you provide training so that public service employees are able then to take over themselves once that contract reaches an end. But these same public service employees have told us they have no choice but to continue with McKinsey because you have a unique benchmark, you have unique information that they can't necessarily own and use. So do you not think there's a bit of a dichotomy there or contradiction?
Okay. Now I understand the question. Thank you. I don't believe there's a dichotomy because when we talk about the tools or the data or the capabilities that we provide, McKinsey is not a software as a service provider. We don't try to set up sustaining licensing contracts with clients. That's not what we do. We bring our knowledge, we bring our expertise, we help train, we help upskill, we help implement, and then we look to our clients and say a critical part of our value proposition is that you are able to continue doing what you're doing when we leave.
Au niveau de la défense.
Well, in the defense sector, you've had a few contracts with National Defense. You provided advice to American businesses as well, and in the defense sector. And we've already asked the question as to how you can ensure that all that information remains confidential, even between countries. I understand that. But I did read in one submission from McKinsey that you don't necessarily provide tailored advice, but methods that have been tried and tested, and that comes from elsewhere. So I guess what I'm wondering is, where do you draw that line then? If we're receiving tailored service and that service isn't drawing on various countries, how does that work?
Next round. Mr. Johns, 2.5, please.
Thank you. You said that McKinsey hasn't been involved in staffing plans. Is that right?
Has it been involved in staffing?
In staffing plans
Staffing?
within the federal government.
Sorry,
Planning on staffing on.
Oh, sorry, I
structuring
couldn't hear the one word
of
you were saying.
staffing within the federal government.
To the best of my knowledge, that is correct.
Okay, because we've got a specific instance, maybe you can help me, where McKinsey developed, basically there's documents we got from Canada Post that reveal that, McKinsey was contracted for service digitalization, which you spoke to earlier, how important that is. And right here in the 2013 5-point action plan, Ready for the Future, it says, quote, Canada Post expects to continue to reduce its unionized workforce by at least 10% over the next 10 years. And this was something that McKinsey, a report that they drafted. So was it McKinsey or was it Canada Post that raised the desire to get rid of unionized workers? And are any of your employees unionized?
So I don't know the specifics of that email. I'm not entirely sure where it came from.
It's a plan. It's a plan that McKinsey helped develop.
Like I said, I don't know the specifics of that situation. My best interpretation of that is the development of the plan working together with Canada Post.
Okay, the plan comes up with, a goal to reduce 10% of the workforce over the next decade. Anyways, I'm just there's a European report, 2017 report called the Big Four. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's the largest global accounting firms that they say are overrepresented in tax havens, such as the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. Are you aware, or do you have a disproportionate number of offices in tax havens, your company?
McKinsey takes paying taxes in all the jurisdictions in which it operates very seriously. We pay taxes in all the jurisdictions in which we operate.
Do you have offices in tax havens, and do you have any offices that are, locations that aren't disclosed on your website, and if so, can you identify which ones, where they are?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm here to talk about our work with the Government of Canada. To the best of my knowledge, all of our locations are listed on our...
Your time is up anyways. If you want to just briefly finish up.
To the best of my knowledge, all of our locations are listed on our website.
Thanks. Mr. Genuis, 5, please.
Thank you. Mr. Poulter, respectfully, I think the company you work for is disgusting, and I think your efforts to whitewash its conduct around the world aren't going to fool anybody who's familiar with McKinsey's track record. And these are issues that we take very seriously as a committee. You say McKinsey refuses work sometimes, presumably on the basis of some ethical criteria. You are a company that literally held a corporate retreat down the road from a concentration camp in Kashgar, and then claimed unfamiliarity with the Uyghur genocide, even though reports about it had been all over UN reports and all over the news prior to that. Specifically, I want to ask you, you claim that your work is guided by the Economist's Democracy Index. I'm skeptical about that claim. Can you tell us specifically which Russian state-owned companies McKinsey has worked for since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014? Go ahead, please.
So let me start by restating. McKinsey is an ethical company.
Yeah. Could you actually just answer the question, though? Which Russian state-owned companies has McKinsey worked for since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014?
So McKinsey is an ethical company. I wake up every day knowing it's an ethical company. I know the 1,100 people who work in Canada know it's an ethical company.
And I wake up every day knowing it's not. But can you answer the question that I just asked? Which Russian state-owned companies has McKinsey worked for since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014?
So I'm the managing partner of McKinsey Canada. I've spent 28 years of my life in Canada. The bulk of my work and bulk of my time is leading our operations in Canada.
Mr. Chair, can you bring the witness to order and inform him of his obligations to answer questions from committee members?
Member has a point. If he could get back to the question at hand, Mr. Poulter. I'm
trying to answer the question. I don't know the specifics of what we have done. As I said,
So you don't know which Russian state-owned companies McKinsey has worked for since 2014?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware that of McKinsey's work for the China Communications Construction Company?
Again, Mr. Chair, I lead the Canadian practice. The bulk of my time is in Canada.
So you're unaware. Is that what you're telling us?
What I am saying is I know we have operations in China, and I know the vast majority of our work in China is for multinational corporations.
You work extensively for Chinese state-owned and state-affiliated companies. That's already a matter of public record. You just haven't been willing to release the names of the companies. Are you familiar with China Communications Construction Company?
I am not familiar with China. Sorry,
okay.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. It's striking that this is a similar sort of communications tactic that we saw from Mr. Barton, which is to say he wasn't aware of a lot of things. It's striking to me that I seem to know more about McKinsey's clients, or at least the names of the clients from media reports, than some of the McKinsey executives or former executives that we've had before the committee. Let me ask you a question that I'm fairly sure you can answer, though. Have you personally worked on Government of Canada contracts?
Yes, I have.
Okay. What's your hourly rate when working on those contracts?
McKinsey doesn't have an hourly rate. We're actually only allowed to charge on firm fixed price contracts.
Okay, so approximately, given the amount of time you spent working on Government of Canada projects, what does that equal on a sort of per week equivalent?
Again, we price on the basis of deliverables, and every engagement is different.
All right. I think there's a lot of questions about what the deliverables are, but do you have a fee schedule for your analysts?
Again, our pricing, according to the procurement rules of the federal government, is firm fixed price contracts. We are paid on the basis of delivering the deliverables stipulated in the contract at a price agreed to by a competitive process.
Okay. Sir, you said that in your opening statement that McKinsey followed all the rules, that these were competitive contracts assessed by public servants, that all the rules were followed. That's a similar line we received from ministers. The problem is that your talking points aren't up to date, because the government released a press release on Friday that said there are indications that certain administrative requirements and procedures were not consistently followed. I don't think the government would issue a press release admitting that they didn't follow all of the rules in their procurement with McKinsey if they weren't sure they hadn't followed the rules. The government wouldn't release a press release like that saying that they had failed to follow the rules if they had been following all the rules. So do you want to acknowledge that that certain administrative requirements and procedures weren't consistently followed, and do you want to share with us why that happened?
I'm afraid you're not going to get an opportunity this round, but perhaps the next round, or perhaps you can address it with someone else's round. Mr. Kuzmierczak, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleague across the table asked a question, or questioned the integrity and ethics of McKinsey. I just wanted to provide you, Mr. Poulter, with an opportunity to answer that charge and that question.
Thank you for the opportunity. As I said, McKinsey is an ethical company. Part of being an ethical company, as I alluded to, is we acknowledge we've made mistakes and we've learned from them. I think the consequence of that is we have made dramatic changes in our firm over the last 10 years as it relates to ensuring compliance with all policies, all procedures for all of our clients everywhere around the world. As I said, we've invested $600 million building first-class systems, training people, changing our compliance processes whereby people have to undertake compliance training before they can receive their bonuses. It's all core to our DNA. I think the second thing I would say is, as a company globally, we take great care in trying to improve the communities in which we operate and adding value back to the communities we operate. For example, in Canada last year, McKinsey did over 7,000 hours of pro bono work for a variety of organizations. Most of our partners sit on the boards of hospitals, food banks, and the like, trying to make the communities better where we operate. And as I said, everybody wakes up every morning knowing that we are an ethical, values-driven company with very high integrity.
I know it's a tough question, but can you give us a sense in some way how many contracts McKinsey has won in 2022? Are we talking hundreds? Are we talking thousands, tens of thousands? Can you provide us with a little bit of an understanding?
Is that a question about contracts with the federal government or
Just contracts in general?
I don't know, but as I alluded to, at any given time, McKinsey has 4,000 to 4,500 client teams working. Does that translate to 4,000 to 4,500 contracts? No, I can't say that, but that's roughly the scale of our firm.
I imagine thousands. Is that fair to say? In any one year?
That would be fair to say, yes.
How many times has McKinsey relied on interventions of elected officials to win those contracts, in your opinion?
None.
Zero. Okay, great. My colleagues across the aisle have suggested that the government shouldn't do any business with McKinsey at all. Can you tell us what countries have a blanket ban on business with McKinsey? How many countries?
None.
Zero. What would be the consequences of such a position, for example, in terms of the skills or value that McKinsey brings to governments like the government of Canada?
Well, as I alluded to, McKinsey has global expertise on a variety of issues that I think are quite important as the government tries to execute its ambitious and complex agenda. And I think the government could benefit from the access to that expertise.
There are over 100 countries that use McKinsey services, as I understand it. And McKinsey has worked with a number of Canadian ministries or departments, Defense, IRCC being some of the larger ones. The world, of course, is changing fast. It's becoming much more complex. What common challenges do you see that are facing ministries and departments, not just Canadian ones, but American ones, Australian ones, and others around the world? What are some of those key challenges that really McKinsey can help with?
I think there are probably two significant challenges among many. The list could be long. I'm going to focus on two. The first one, again, is this rapid evolution of technology. The private sector, I think, as everyone appreciates, be it banks, insurance companies, retailers, consumer packaged goods companies, energy companies, are rapidly evolving technology. ChatGPT being the latest example of that, and how that's going to upend just about all of our lives. Related to that is digitization, and how do you take services and digitize them in a world where we have people with very diverse needs? We have language issues. We have issues with disabilities. We have issues with time zones. We have issues with broadband access. Trying to solve all those problems is core to what McKinsey does as a firm and core to the issues that the government faces. That's one. The second is trying to find a way to do more with less. Trying to figure out how to do more with less. Every organization is trying to figure out how to do more with less because the demands always go up. Always go up.
You don't replicate, replace, or duplicate the work of the public service, do you?
Just a brief answer. Oh, I was going to say just a brief answer, but thank you for being ahead of me. Back to you, Mr. Jennings, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, we know you work with governments around the world. You work with the government of Russia. You work with the government of Saudi Arabia. You work with the government of China, entities that are affiliated with them. You told your employees not to attend a pro-democracy protest in support of Mr. Navalny in Russia. And again, you may not be aware of those things, sir, but those things are, of course, matters of public record. And I wanted to follow up just at the end of the last round of questions. I was asking, you say all the rules were followed. The government admitted in a press release on Friday that all the rules were not followed. Were all the rules followed or not, sir?
Well, as I stated previously, McKinsey takes its obligation to adhere to the rules very seriously. I also wanted to clarify
you didn't do it, right?
the record. McKinsey has exited Russia. We exited a year ago. We have no activities whatsoever in Russia.
Yeah. Yeah, but Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, sir. 2014. That took a heck of a long time for you to realize what was happening in Crimea and the Donbass. But I'll come back to my question, which was not answered. Could you clearly tell us whether the rules were followed? And like, it's not about whether you take the rules seriously. It's about whether you actually followed them. So the government says you didn't follow all the rules. Did you follow all the rules?
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to clarify, because my interpretation of the press release was that it said two things. The first was that there was no political involvement in the selection of McKinsey for contracts, and the second, it said the rules were not followed. It was not clear who was or was not following the rules.
That's correct. It says, however, there are indications that certain administrative requirements and procedures were not consistently followed. But you're telling us rules were followed, and the government's saying rules were not followed. I didn't say that, you know, it was wholly on one party or the other, but clearly rules were not followed. Do you accept that rules were not followed in the awarding of these contracts?
If you follow the word of the independent review, the TBS, it would say somewhere the rules were not followed.
Okay, and I hope you believe that, but it's contrary to what you said in your initial testimony.
No,
that
what I
rules were
said is
followed.
McKinsey follows the rules.
Well, okay, but you received contracts through a process that did not follow the rules. You either didn't follow the rules or you benefited from the government not following the rules. Let me ask you. You talked about digital transformation. Did you advise the government at any point on the Phoenix Pay system?
No.
Okay. Has McKinsey done opioid work in Canada?
This is an important question, and
Yes.
the answer is McKinsey has done no opioid sales and marketing work in Canada.
Have you advised Purdue Pharma in Canada or any other opioid manufacturers?
As I said, McKinsey has done no opioid sales and marketing in Canada.
So you don't do it, obviously, but you're advising companies that do it, correct?
We do not advise on opioid sales and marketing in Canada. And
have you done work for Purdue Canada?
And Mr. Chair, I'm here and I'm happy to take questions about our relationship with the federal government and the work that we've done and the results that we
great. I'm asking you a question. Have you done work for Purdue Pharma Canada?
I do not believe we have done work for Purdue Canada.
Okay. Have you done work for opioid manufacturers here in Canada?
I don't know. I have been the managing partner of McKinsey since September 2022.
Right. Okay. Well, if you could send a follow-up to the committee, please, about which opioid manufacturers you have done work for in Canada. So McKinsey analysts were advising the Prime Minister's Growth Council, correct?
McKinsey was providing data and analytical support to the Growth Council.
Correct. Were people who worked on the Growth Council, were any of the analysts who worked on the Growth Council also working on other projects, paid projects for the Government of Canada?
Again, you know, McKinsey was providing data and analytical support to the Growth Council. I do not know the specifics of what happened to those folks after that.
Okay. It would be very convenient if people that were doing work for the Growth Council were simultaneously doing work for the government on paid projects or seeking paid projects. And we know from the email record that your predecessor, Andrew Pickersgill, supplied analysts for the Growth Council and was also involved in soliciting work for the government. Can you confirm that's the case?
So McKinsey did provide analysts and analytical resources to support the Growth Council's work.
Mr. Pickersgill provided those analysts and also was soliciting work from the government, correct?
So, again, McKinsey was providing analysts to support the Growth Council.
And the same person who was providing that analysis was also soliciting work from the government. Does that seem like a conflict of interest to you?
So, a couple thoughts. First of all, McKinsey signed a document with the Growth Council stipulating that we had to adhere to the conflict of interest requirements of the federal government, which we did.
Right, but you're not answering my question. My question is, does it seem like a conflict of interest that your predecessor, Andrew Pickersgill, was simultaneously supplying analysts and analysis to the government while also soliciting paid work from the government? Does that seem like a conflict of interest to you?
Conversations between an advisory firm and the government is a routine procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
That's just not the question.
That is, okay. Sorry, that is their time. Mr. Baines, please.
Ethical.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witness for joining us today. Sir, if, some have criticized McKinsey, saying that it has created a shadow public service and provides no long-term value to the public service. Is there skill transfer from your companies to public servants that they can benefit from after a contract ends?
Yes, there is. As I alluded to previously, every contract we take on with federal government, there is a component of skill building. For example, as I alluded to, when we did digitization work for IRCC, part of our contract was to help build what they call a digital lab. This is a group within IRCC that is staffed up with digital experts, scrum masters, data scientists, data engineers, graphical user interface designers, workflow designers that could work across the rest of the government, digitizing other processes without support from McKinsey.
Okay, and some have accused your company of working for governments and regulators while simultaneously working for corporations lobbying for change. Can you explain to the committee any safeguards or policies your company has in place to prevent abuse or transfer of information between McKinsey staff?
So this again, this is a critical question. First of all, McKinsey takes client confidences and the management of client data very, very seriously. It is the core of who we are. And as I said previously, the fact that we have been in business for 100 years on this model, where 2/3 of our clients are long-standing repeat clients, provides evidence that we know how to manage this data. On top of that, we are required to comply with the federal government's requirements on data management, data integrity, data security, data protection. We have fully dedicated teams internally in Canada and globally whose sole job is to ensure we comply with those rules and to ensure that the data is protected and secure.
Okay, and when asked about how the government could reduce its reliance on outsourcing and improve capacity, Dominic Bartman was blunt in saying, "My personal view is that the human resource systems are weak." Would you agree? And what suggestions would you offer to improve?
I think it best if I let Dominic Barton and Dominic Barton's testimony stand. My personal experience in the interaction that I've had, they've been positive and terrific, and the civil service has really high quality folks.
Okay, and there's been criticism during prior committee meetings that McKinsey is making policy decisions and not the public sector or ministers. How would you respond to those claims?
McKinsey has not and does not and will not make policy decisions. As you've heard from other witnesses at this committee, they themselves have supported that point of view. So we do not make policy.
Okay, and maybe finally, if we have time, in your view, do consulting firms have an appropriate level of accountability to Canadians?
Yes, consulting firms, well, at least McKinsey. I can't comment on the other consulting firms. McKinsey does have significant accountability to Canadians. I'd like to offer an example. The government, when they put contracts together with us, require that we achieve certain performance standards for our contract to be continued. If we do not achieve the standards and the deliverables stipulated in the contract, our contract ceases. I think that's a wonderful practice to ensure that the government is getting value from their consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. We now have Ms. Vinola for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Chair. If I understood you correctly, McKinsey provides advice, consulting, let's say on growth, for example. McKinsey provided data, analytical resources, global data that has been anonymized, and they're used in tools, analysis tools.
OK. Donc, ce sont des
So you have data that you've obtained globally, and that allows you to provide a fulsome analysis of a local situation, let's say somewhere in Canada. So you can apply a process then. You can apply your analytical process, and that has been proven within your company globally. So you've used proven methods.
This is a great question. So, for example, McKinsey has a tool. It's called Digital Quotient. It's part of the National Master Standing Offer. And the Digital Quotient is a data set where McKinsey has collected benchmarks on best practice processes, structures in digital organizations, and we have brought that to bear so that the federal government can get best practices benchmarking on that sort of topic.
Merci.
Thank you. So then this is a process that you could apply not only in Canada, but perhaps anywhere else in the world. And in that case, how can we ensure that we're not being given an identical process to one being used in another country?
So I think we should separate the idea of a benchmark and a process. A benchmark is a benchmark. Data has to be anonymized and it has to be secure, and we respect that significantly, and we have dedicated resources to ensure benchmarks that use proprietary data, respect the proprietary nature of the data.
Mais pour créer le processus.
But if you're going to create a process, in doing so, you're using data, including the benchmarks. So how do we then make sure that the process you're using isn't the same one as everyone else? And perhaps you could give me that answer in writing because my time is finished.
A benchmarking tool is a diagnostic tool. It helps identify where processes need to be changed. Then it's our job in consultation with our client, in this case the civil service, to take the diagnostic delivered by the benchmark and work to customize the process around those elements for the environment that we're working in, the people, whatever the situation may be. But I'll give you an example. Agile execution, there's a certain way that a core agile execution happens, but it has to be customized for the department that you're working in, the country that you're working in. But agile at its core is a particular model.
Colleagues, we're going to skip the last round, but I'm going to let everyone on this round go a bit longer. So Ms. Vinola, about 30 seconds, and Mr. Johns, about 3.5.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Earlier on, you were asked about your clients. Could you give us a list of your clients to this committee? And we'd have to agree, obviously, on that list so that we don't breach any confidentiality.
Mr. Chair, client confidences.
Ms. Partley, go ahead.
Client confidences are something that we take very, very seriously and are bound in many cases or all cases by legal obligations. I'm here to comply and work with the committee, and I'm happy to take that way and figure out how to think about that question.
Thank you. Mr. Johns, go ahead.
So I really appreciate, Mr. Poulter, you sharing with us that you're around or less than 1% of the overall outsourcing that's taking place in Canada. But I'll just say, like everyday Canadians, your company had $642,000 in consulting contracts with Canada in 2011. Now you're at 32 million. Okay, when we look at overall, like the big 6 outsourcing companies, they've gone from 54 million to over $500 million in a decade. That's unbelievable growth. And I guess my question to you is, you run a really sophisticated consulting company. You're a highly paid consultant. what advice would you give to Canada to curb this? Because this is clearly growing at an extraordinary rate.
I think there's this is a great question. This is an important question. This is kind of the guts of what we're getting at.
It's why we're here as New Democrats. We're not on a gotcha or a witch hunt. We actually want to solve this.
I think look, consultants can add a ton of value when used appropriately. When the scope is clear, the distinctive capabilities are complementary to what the federal government needs or what any client needs. There's a clear work plan. There's clear deliverables. I would say that there's, the government should ask, where are those situations where we really need that expertise that we can bring to complement and stand up the civil service?
I guess my concern is you've got 1,000 employees doing a lot of work outside of the public service. And so for good reason, people are saying there's a shadow public service in operation right now. How do we get those jobs and that expertise back in the public service is where we want to go. So I'm actually hoping that, and Mr. Baines asked a good question around accountability and transparency. Where can you improve on that in that area? Where do you believe that McKinsey, in your relationship with Canada and Canadian taxpayers, that you can improve in better transparency and accountability?
I believe that the procurement process that is run by the government, at least in McKinsey's case, puts an awful lot of requirements on us to ensure value for money, to ensure performance, to ensure skill improvement, to ensure all the deliverables that we commit to.
I appreciate that. I'm not really getting an answer to the question. Just one last question. Have you given any advice on real estate and the government's ownership of buildings and lands to potentially sell them or use them differently?
No.
Okay, thank you.
You're fine, Mr. Johns?
Oh, I can go on for quite a while.
Give you another. We'll give you another minute.
Okay. Concerns that have been shared, obviously, with McKinsey's role in the toxic drug crisis and in marketing, and I know you weren't there, but this is it's a huge issue for us, as you know, in our country. We've got people dying every day, and McKinsey played a role in that in terms of the promotion of toxic opioids. How do you decide when you're going to decline doing business for a potential client? I mean, this is when it comes down to the ethics of it. I mean, your company promoted a product that went against government policy. Like, clearly there was a breach in ethics and values.
So a couple thoughts. First of all, my deepest sympathies for anybody who has had to deal with the opioid crisis. It is tragic. The second thing is I did want to clarify, Mr. Chair, that McKinsey has done no work on opioids promotion in Canada. And the work in the United States, it was below our standards.
Do you have one last quick question, Mr. Johns?
I think it was far below anyone's standards, and I really hope that your company is going to answer in terms of the future on where the bar is on what you're going to do in terms of who you're going to work with and who you're going to take on as clients, especially when it flies in the face of public policy.
Thank you, Mr. Johns.
Thank you.
Ms. Cusi for five-ish.
Five-ish. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Poulter, I'm holding the internal audit of federal government consulting contracts awarded to McKinsey and Company, which, as we indicated, was released on Friday, strangely, during Biden's visit. Very odd, the timing of that. But I'm looking here, findings for objective 2, fairness, openness, and transparency. It says here, this objective was partially met. That's not great that it was partially met. The report goes on to state there were issues with the accuracy of the statement of work. The report then goes on to say the contract may not have been in place before the vendor commenced work. Is that McKinsey's normal practice to begin work before the contract is signed?
So, Mr. Chair, I have not seen that interim report. So this is the first that I have heard of the specifics on this. What I can say is that McKinsey works to follow all the policies and procurement procedures as dictated by the federal government.
But I would think, any serious organization, any business organization, certainly one of the standards of McKinsey would have had a contract in place prior to beginning work. And yet here it states in this report that this is one of the criteria that was not met. In addition, given the contract date was less than 24 hours earlier than the deliverable date, with no vendor signature on the contract to establish the start date, there is a risk that the work began before the contract was in place, as we've determined here. Also, it states, Mr. Poulter, the terms of the contract were not met because only one of the 4 presentations stipulated in the contract was provided by the vendor, and yet the vendor was paid the full contract amount. Now, as we've seen by the bonuses handed out to civil servants recently, despite not having met their objectives less than 60% of the time, is this the normal practice of McKinsey that you would complete a quarter of the work, 25%, and yet take the entire amount that was awarded to you?
Mr. Chair, I don't know what the specifics of that situation are, and again, I would say McKinsey follows the procurement policies, the rules, the regulations, the process for how these contracts get awarded.
It goes on to state the project authority needs to conduct effective monitoring to ensure that the delivery of services meets the provisions of the contract, including its statement of work in terms of quality standards and service level. So as I indicated in my last round, we're clearly missing some information here, either from one of the 2 ministers responsible to this committee or from your organization. It also says here, the vendor did not provide the deliverables in accordance with the contract statement of work. I just alluded to that in my last question. First, the deck did not address all the technologies outlined in the statement of work. It did not cover virtual reality and biometrics. It states here specifically. Second, there was no evidence on the file, this will be important to Canadians, that the vendor submitted the presentation in French as well as English. Third, only 1 presentation was delivered, not 4 as outlined in the statement of work. So we addressed already the 25% of the deliverables being there, but now that the vendor submitted the presentation, no evidence that this was submitted in French as well as English. Were you aware of that, and is that of concern to you, since it was for the Government of Canada, where all work should comply with the rules as to our official languages?
So, Mr. Chair, this is, again, the first I've heard of this, and given this is an interim report, I haven't seen it nor received a copy of it, so I'm not in a position to comment. What I can say is we abide by the rules, the policies, the procedures that are required by the federal government on all contracts.
I would suggest you read it, and with that, I'll pass some time back to Mr. Genis.
Thank you, Chair. McKinsey is an ethical dumpster fire, and you, sir, are supposed to answer questions about it. And there are so many things that you are unaware of. You're unaware of the work done in Russia and China. You're unaware of the fact that rules weren't followed in these contracts. You're unaware of the internal audit report that my colleague has brought out, and you're unable to answer questions about whether there was a conflict of interest when Andrew Pickersgill, your predecessor, was supplying analysis to the Prime Minister's Growth Council at the same time as he was pitching the government on contracts, while McKinsey the whole time was not on the lobbying registry. I would like to know, just as we wrap up today, if Andrew Pickersgill will be prepared to testify before the committee, since he was managing partner during most of the period we're covering, and perhaps can shed some light on the things you have been unable or unwilling to answer. Is Mr. Pickersgill available to testify before this committee?
Mr. Chair, I'm here as the managing partner of McKinsey Company in compliance with the request of the committee. I'm here to answer the questions that are being asked to the best of my ability. And I'm happy to try and continue answering the questions.
But we do need to have answers from McKinsey, and there's clearly a lot of things you've said you can't or you won't or you're not able to answer. So if you can bring the message back that this committee does have the power to subpoena witnesses, we want to hear from Mr. Pickersgill specifically about the work he did for the Growth Council at the same time as he was working on paid government contracts. And we will have Andrew Pickersgill testify before the committee by whatever means are necessary. So I hope that he will make himself available to testify before the committee. I think he has important things to share with us.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis. Mr. Housefather, if you'll finish this off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Poulter, for being here, and thank you for the fact that you've shared so much information with the committee. I think it is absolutely important to state that McKinsey actually complied completely with what the committee asked. I also would note that Mr. Pickersgill has not been summoned here by the majority of the members of the committee at this point. He's not been asked to be a witness by anybody other than one person at this point. So we'll see if whether or not we need to hear from him. At this point, I believe this is about the 9th meeting the committee has had about McKinsey. We've diverted ourselves away from the larger, more important subject about whether or not the federal government is doing too much outsourcing and how we would reduce that outsourcing. The budget yesterday actually talked about reducing the amount we spend on outsourcing by billions of dollars, so we're going to have to. And we've tried to create a narrative, some people, that because Dominic Barton was somehow a close friend of the Prime Minister, McKinsey got all of this business. Of course, when Mr. Barton was here, as you heard, and you said his testimony can speak for itself, we recognize that he's not a friend of the Prime Minister's, not even one of his 50 best friends is the Prime Minister, that they've never socialized. He doesn't have his phone number. And in fact, we've also noted that McKinsey's business drastically increased with the Government of Canada after Mr. Barton left McKinsey and divested all of his shares. So if he was trying to get business from McKinsey, he did a terrible job. So I just want to, because you've sort of been subject to some real criticism of your company in a way that it was directed in, I think, a very unfair way, I want to ask just a couple of brief things. Can you talk about some of the volunteer stuff you do for UJA, for other organizations?
I'd be happy to. So I have been involved with the United Jewish Appeal of Toronto for about 15 years with a specific focus on education and helping support our Jewish education to strengthen the Jewish community in the city of Toronto. And I was for a long time the co-chair of the Center for Jewish Education, which overlooked the Jewish day school system in Toronto.
Can I talk now about who are your major competitors in the Canadian market?
We have several competitors. It's a very competitive marketplace. Organizations like the Boston Consulting Group, Bain, Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst & Young, PwC, Accenture, the like.
I know you can't be aware of the internal policies of all of these different companies, but do you have any inclination that these companies have better policies related to ethics or better policies related to compliance than McKinsey does?
I have no specific information on it. My best guess is it's probably not better than McKinsey's.
Okay,
we've invested a lot.
I'm going to come back to the compliance question in a second. To talk about how you do compliance. But can I just again reiterate the percentage of your business that you do with government, the Canadian branch of McKinsey, is 5 to 7%, you said?
Correct.
So in the event that you had not gotten that business, and I imagine that business not only from the Government of Canada, it's also from various provinces such as Quebec, you would have been able, I think, relatively easily to replace that business with private companies or others to make up that 5 to 7%, correct?
Correct.
So you weren't desperately seeking the business of the Government of Canada. This was not something that McKinsey sought as a number one priority, I would imagine.
No, we took on the work because many of our junior folks are inspired by trying to make Canada a better place. They want to take their skills and their capabilities that they've learned at McKinsey and bring it to the civil service to make Canada a better place for everybody.
And we've been talking a little bit about the preliminary audit results, which again are the audit results on the government side, not the McKinsey side. And we saw things like, for example, files did not keep the signatories of the contract on both sides. They only had one of the signatories in the government filing thing, or there were statements of work that were incomplete. But did the government of Canada ever send a notice of default to McKinsey under any one of these agreements ever?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And presumably, the civil servants who awarded the contracts and who determined that outsourcing was required in those cases, because the audits made very clear there was no political interference, would have determined if they saw deficiencies in the work that McKinsey was doing under the contract, and would have sent notices of default. So you're saying nobody ever got a notice of default, and McKinsey is not aware of any breach of the contract any of these contracts that it ever had?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, perfect. Now, coming back to compliance, my understanding is that you have a chief compliance officer based in Texas. Is there a worldwide compliance policy, or do you also have a compliance person in Canada that reports to the person in Texas and deals with compliance in Canada?
We have a global compliance and Canadian compliance. It's a global function, but we do have Canadian representation. We have specifically dedicated lawyers, risk managers, contract managers, systems, policies, procedures, checks and balances for Canada.
And presumably you have that around the world as well. And when you see that there are issues such as allegations related to opioids in the United States, allegations in South Africa, McKinsey's compliance department validates, number one, that laws were followed or not, and number two, changes policies in the event they see that there are breaches or deficiencies, correct?
Yes, McKinsey takes the compliance with all laws, every law, very, very seriously, and we have the people, the tools, the systems, to processes to ensure that we're complying.
And when you enter into settlement agreements, for example, it costs McKinsey partners money. So there would be a goal, presumably, not to further need to enter into settlement agreements and cost the company money. So not only from an ethical standard in terms of improvement, but also from a pure financial standpoint, you'd want to make sure that you were in full compliance, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Chair, do I have any time left?
One quick question.
No, I'm good. I just want to thank Mr.
Thanks.
Palter for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Hausfather. Mr. Palter, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Colleagues, we're going to suspend for about a minute or two, but Mr. Palter will excuse you and your colleagues. Again, thank you for joining us. Colleagues, we're suspended. we are unsuspended. We're going to, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan, and he's going to walk us through for a couple minutes his report that we asked for. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members will have received yesterday a document from the library that outlines the status of the documents that were ordered by the committee pursuant to the motion of January 18th. In that motion, they had requested documents from both McKinsey and federal organizations that had contracted with McKinsey. So the report that you have focuses on the degree of redactions that were made to those documents. As we have outlined here, McKinsey has since sent us 91,000 pages of documents, and those were since sent unredacted. It also describes that there were 20 federal organizations that have sent documentation to the committee, most of which had sent that in redacted form. I think there were 16 in redacted form and 4 in unredacted form, as well as one that declined to send information. And there's an illustrative table at the end of the report that shows that really illustrates some of the extent of the redactions that were made to those documents. I will leave it there, but if members have questions, they can feel free to ask Diana and I.
I've got started a list. I've got Mr. Barrett, I got Mr. Godin, I have Mrs. Vinola. You want to chat on it? Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Thanks to our analysts, Diana and Ryan.
And I do apologize. I'll interrupt you for a moment. Thank you, analysts, for that.
Yes. Didn't like that
Mr.
I was cutting your grass there.
You did.
Mr. Chair.
You did.
So, thanks, but yes, thanks very much for turning this around for us. This is good, but I think it's important based on this report that we do inform the House. And so until we do that, the House is unaware that this has occurred. So I would like to amend or to just add to the end of the report, and I'll just read 2 quick lines into the record. Not too quick. The right to institute inquiries and demand papers is one of the privileges of the House of Commons as a collectivity. Accordingly, the committee wishes to draw the attention of the House on what appears to be a breach of its privileges and/or a possible case of contempt of Parliament, and recommends the House to take measures it deems appropriate. And that's the end of the addition that I'd like to make. So this wording, though I'd like to tell you that I just wrote it up now, Chair, this is lifted from similar other reports that have gone from committees to the House with respect to similar breaches of privileges with respect to requests for or orders for production of documents. And so I think that it would be appropriate to include it here as well.
Godin, sorry, Mr. Godin, you wanted to?
Oui, monsieur.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me opportunity to speak. I'm not a regular member, but I'm the spokesperson for the Conservative Party for official languages. Now, it occurred to me, as one of the analysts pointed out, that 91,000 pages were provided by McKinsey and various departments also. And I just want to recall, Chair, that in terms of procedure, all documents that are provided by departments, and I even have the exact wording in the procedures, but all documents, all departments and federal organizations must provide their documents to committees in both official languages. Anyone else can provide documents in one or another languages. So I'm not talking about all 91,000 pages provided by McKinsey, but I am talking about the documents provided by the departments, including, Madam Clerk, you received a letter on the 25th of March last where Employment and Development Canada tells the committee that they're having problems providing documents in both official languages. And they say in this letter, and I believe it's the Deputy Minister, the Deputy Minister for EDSC. I assume there aren't 22. You're probably familiar with who it is. But they say that in order to be able to comply with the commitment, that is to say providing documents in both official languages, certain concessions had to be made with respecting the order of the documents being provided, amongst those provided in French. Now, I would just like to point out to all members of the committee that in the House of Commons procedure, which applies to committees, all documents must be provided in both official languages, and concessions are not included in the procedural rules. If a concession is going to be made in one language, well, as you know, we're working on Bill C-13 in committee in order to update the Official Languages Act. And the only language declining out of the 2 official languages in Canada is French. So I think it's important to take note of this information in the report. It is unacceptable. And whether it be French or English. But in this case, it's French. And Canada is supposed to be a bilingual country. And I'm going to define what bilingual means in Canada. It means English and French. Now, as you know, we have a Governor General who is bilingual, but she doesn't speak French. So it's important to point out to all members of the committee that you all have to be aware of the fact that people who only speak French are at a disadvantage. Their rights are being breached. They have a right as member of parliament, and it's the least that should be done. It says here in this letter why the French documents are not being provided in time, and it's because of technological issues that can't be resolved in the expected time frame. So how, as members of parliament, can we accept that? Because it is a violation of our rights as parliamentarians, and therefore also indirectly affects the respect for one of the official languages. So I want it to be noted in the report. And given that members of parliament did not all get the same information and did not have access to the same information because they work in French, and it's unacceptable, Chair. And I think it has to be expressed as such. As parliamentarians, this has to be respected for as long as we have a French-English bilingual country. Both official languages have to be respected. And procedure of the House of Commons has to be complied with. It is incumbent on all departments of federal organizations to provide all documents in French and English. And they can't just say, well, there were concessions had to be made. They can't provide less than one language. You know, you have a document that might have 800 pages in French, but in English, it has 1,000. So think about it. There's a percentage that means that is 10% more in one language than in the other. So there are 300 pages potentially missing here. What is that information that's missing and that isn't accessible to those members of parliament who speak French? I think it's very important to draw this to your attention and to ensure that it doesn't happen again. I think that drafting the report should be delayed until all members of parliament around this table have access to all the documents in both English and French, and that they be translated so that everything is conveyed. Thank you, Chair.
this report being translated. Thanks.
Merci,
Yeah.
Monsieur le
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, you're referring to the SDC. Thanks. Mrs. Vanola, please.
Lorsque
When I saw the Deputy Minister Tremblay's letter, now I know that I have a certain personality, character. I know I can sometimes be a bit, have a bit of a temper at times. However, I looked at this calmly, and I'm expressing calmly my consternation, my disappointment with respect to this letter. And not only that, especially the fact that it sends a certain message, and that is that if someone's unilingual francophone, that's less acceptable than being unilingual anglophone. And it means, well, francophones, they should be able to read English because that's the language that the majority speaks. So they'll figure it out. They may not understand all the metaphors, but that doesn't matter. You know, we have to stop being treated as second-class citizens. When has it happened that documents weren't translated into English? And that Anglophones didn't receive their documents at the same time the Francophones did, or that they received less documents than the Francophones received because, oh, well, concessions had to be made with respect to the translation. I'd be interested in knowing, because I don't think it has ever happened in this Parliament. Now, I see colleagues listening, but I see other colleagues who are looking at their cell phones or they're on their laptops, and that this attitude only confirms what I'm saying. You know, I have some very unparliamentary language that I'm thinking about right now, but I'm not going to say it. You know, I take the time to read all the documents I get, and I'm forced to read these documents in both official languages. Why? Because sometimes there's more redaction in the French than in English, or sometimes the translation really is terrible. Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea of the kind of work that involves for me? Simply because I want taxpayers' money to be well invested. I don't want there to be waste. And if in a study there was no waste, then that's great. I'm going to be happy. So I'll be happy. I'll be pleased with the work that I did. But I want you to realize what it means for a Francophone to have to work, to have to do double the work because the translation wasn't done or it was incomplete. It's an insult. It's unacceptable. And it's a historical slap in the face. And this has to be written down in the report. And the report has to go to the House because enough is enough. You know, there aren't only Francophones in Quebec. There are Francophones throughout Canada, and all those Francophones have the right to be respected. These documents aren't necessarily public, but even if you're talking about public documents, it also happens. And I'm not just talking about typos or grammar or syntax. I'm talking about huge mistakes, documents that are incomplete. So enough is enough. This here, a letter like this, I'm going to say it in English so it's perfectly clear.
Piece of crap. Désolé.
I'm sorry, I know it's unparliamentary, but but it has to be said.
Thank you, Mrs. Vinola. And yes, I agree with the second part. It had to be said. I appreciate that. Colleagues, are we ready to discuss Mr. Barrett's motion or move forward on it? Mr. Housefather?
Monsieur le Président, je veux intervenir.
Thank you. I would like to also speak. I think there are two subjects here. The first is the one raised by Mr. Gaudin, Ms. Vignola. And obviously, it's absolutely unacceptable that there be more redactions in a French or English version, or that the French be incomplete, or that the deputy minister use the kind of language that was used. I guess he doesn't fully realize that he has to provide documents to the committee in both official languages, and that is a problem. And perhaps we should ask the person who signed that letter to come before the committee and explain themselves. But I think there are 2 points at hand here. The first is that we asked for thousands and thousands of pages of documents from departments throughout the government. And those documents are not necessarily available as soon as the committee asks for them in both official languages. You know, we have a policy where we communicate with companies in the language of that company. So it may be that there are a series of contracts only in English or only in French. And so when the committee asks for all these contracts and asks for all attached documents, then those documents obviously have to be translated. Now, in this case, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pages in one direction or another. So it's not an easy task. And this is something that the committee should consider. We're making it almost impossible to provide proper translation when we're setting tight timelines. And if we give these dates and we insist on having a whole series of documents, then within that timeline, then it can lead to a serious situation. And here we're seeing that this is what has happened with respect to the translation of documents. So I think it's an issue for the departments, but I think it's also an issue for the committee when we start choosing dates and numbers of documents that we're requesting. Now, in terms of the quality of the translation, I think that, and the intention of the letter, I think that the committee should call that person before the committee to speak to this. And we need to raise the issue of translation to the House. Now, in terms of the documents themselves.
To make sure, I think it's mostly to you that I'm hoping we'll have the action item here. To me, there's a couple of questions. McKinsey originally delivered documents that were redacted. And then we went back to McKinsey and we said to McKinsey, no, that is not acceptable. Please provide us with documents that are not redacted, and we will give you a chance to justify to us what shouldn't be made public based on the documents you now give us, which McKinsey then agreed to. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't seem to me that we've clearly stated that to government departments. And my question to you, Mr. Chair, and my request to you, Mr. Chair, would be, I think the next step is to go back to the government departments and to say, we asked you for non-redacted documents, to the same letter to everybody. We asked you for non-redacted documents. You have not delivered non-redacted documents. McKinsey has delivered all the documents in a non-redacted format. PSPC, the main department, has delivered their documents in a non-redacted format. We fully expect you to comply with this order and deliver us non-redacted documents. And in the event you believe some of the provisions should not be ever made public, please provide the committee with all of the reasons why that part shouldn't be made public, and we would be delighted to consider all of your requests and provide us with this by X date. And then if they don't comply at that point, I'd be happy then to say, okay, well, that would get referred, but I would like to give a clear directive to the chair to go back to the departments with a very clear message, exactly what you did with McKinsey, to each of these departments that has not complied. And so to me, on that part, on the documents part, to me, Mr. Chair, I'd like to see that as the next step, as opposed to just sending this report to the House. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure, I'll address that. Hold on 2 seconds. I'll address that. Like, we have had lots of problems with the departments. I think the ESDC is just the, it's just kind of the cream on the top, adding to the issue of refusing to comply with Parliament. We've extended lots of opportunities, written several times to each of the departments who have refused. We've heard it in committee from 2 different deputy ministers when their ministers were here that they didn't believe they needed to comply. The correspondence coming back from the departments is almost, Mrs. Vinola talked about wanting to use unparliamentary language, and I'm at that point right now as well. It's almost a level of arrogance. We've had them quoting law, quoting it violates the Constitution to obey an order of Parliament, that they're following past practice of ignoring Parliament and refusing to hand these documents over. And one of the departments out and out, no, we're not going to give you anything. We have, this committee, I believe, has bent over backwards, been accommodating. A lot of it has arrived late. And it's like, okay, well, we wish you would comply with the exact date. We've extended dates. But by and large, these departments, we've written several escalating letters from polite to less polite to less polite, more direct, reminding them of the motion and reminding them of very clear what the powers of committee are. And they have responded back, no, we'll follow the ATIP rules, or we're not providing it. Or as we saw, I think it was CBSA said in this committee, we'll take it under advisement, and they have to balance it. Like, we've given that, and I'm sorry for being on the high horse here, but we've given these departments every opportunity to do this. And then today, one of the departments comes back with a slap in the face. And my French is frankly quite horrible. I've spoken French twice in the House in 7 years here. And I try, but it's not good. But it is our rules, our laws, both languages, but it's also our rules and our laws that, in the Green Book, very clearly the powers of committee. And it's not once, it's sometimes 3 or 4 letters we've sent demanding this. And we quite literally just get no, we're not interested. We don't believe we have to. And so I'm happy to, if that's the will of the committee, to do one more attempt, but we've given them several clear, unambiguous, statements of what is required of them. But if that's the will of the committee, I will. Mr. Barrett, and then I think it was Mr. Godin, Mr. Barrett, Mrs. Vinola, then Mr. Kuzmierczak.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. To respond to my colleague opposite, Canada is a French and English bilingual country. So, it has nothing to do with ease or facility in using a language. I mean, in the letter, in the same letter, we're being asked to be indulgent. But it's not just that we have to make it easy for them. It has to be a priority. Now, I'm not a permanent member, and I would like there to be an update here. I think we need to refer to the official languages, and I think we need to refer to what was provided by EDSC as well. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, as a committee member, you cannot move the amendment, but I think Mr. Barrett is up next, and I'm sure he might be willing to, or if not, Mrs. Vinola.
So I imagine that
let's just deal with Mr. Barrett's. Well, we kind of have to deal with your original motion to begin
right.
with.
Yeah. So I'm happy to move the appropriate amendment once we've dispensed with the amendment that is currently on the floor. But I don't think I can amend my amendment. So I guess I'd just ask. So one very quick thing. I appreciate your intervention with respect to the fairness that has been offered to the departments. It's included in the letter. It talks about the March 6th motion that the committee passed, and then the letter that was sent 2 days later to all the committees. It was at that time that members of the committee raised the question of privilege, and the chair suggested that if memory serves me, that more correspondence be sent. The correspondence was sent, and once is the correct number of times that we need to ask to get what is legally what the departments are legally obligated to provide to us. So they've had multiple opportunities and ample time, and they've demonstrated, as is evidenced in multiple letters, an unwillingness or a refusal to comply. And so we are where we are, not for a lack of opportunity being given by this committee, and that's evidenced in the report prepared by the analysts. So Chair, we're past 6:30. I'd like to know how much time we have left, because I think on this important issue that we're able to dispense with it today, because we'll be weeks further down the road before we have an opportunity to deal with this again, and I wouldn't want to see us lose resources before we
Let me just find out
resolve it.
quickly, and then I'll let you continue. We've got maybe about 20 minutes.
Okay, so I have my motion on the floor, and I'd just look for support for that.
Mrs. Vinola, then Mr. Kusmirchuk, then Mr. Johns. And please keep in time.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Can I make an amendment in the way that Mr. Godin brought it forward? Can I make that amendment to the report?
Yep, that's fine, Mrs. Vinola.
OK. Donc, étant...
In that case, I'd just like to start by answering my colleague with respect to the tight timeline. It takes a while to translate. But I just want to say that it's always French that suffers from this in the end. And you would get just as indignant if this letter was asked, and I'm not trying to start a war here between Anglophones and Francophones. I mean, we're not on the Plains of Abraham. That's over. That's done with. We could talk about that for a long time. But these kinds of concessions would not be accepted if we were talking about French documents that hadn't been translated in time into English. And now we're being asked, as usual, to be indulgent and to indulge them. It's always the French that ends up suffering. But we do exist. And we plan on staying here and on existing. We count. And we are part of something called Canada until proven otherwise. And so we are owed that respect. So this was a formal, official request. We're asking for respect. I'm asking that in the report that the issue of official languages in terms of document translation be included. I'm asking this of the analysts. And this letter could also be included from EDSC. Because we count.
Désolée, juste une question, Madame.
Is it your intention to mention the report? Do you just, or do you want to add the report? In the analyst report, I want this added. I want it added that there is an issue regarding official languages in the documents, whether it has to do with translation or redaction, so quality of translation and redaction. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
OK, pardon.
Excuse me, to the clerk. The letter has to be mentioned. If not included, it has to at least be mentioned and shown as an example. So the letter should be mentioned and the issue of official languages should be raised. Do you want specific wording, or you are giving instructions to the analyst to write something? I just want to make sure I've understood.
Je préfère.
Well, I trust the analysts to find appropriate wording to reflect the emotions that I expressed earlier appropriately, and to make it clear that any documents that are requested be provided in full and translated.
Madame Vignola, juste pour...
Ms. Vignola, then. So you're giving the analyst the permission to write to this rather than make a specific amendment? So you want them to add a paragraph on this issue rather than provide definite wording. So I just wanted to make sure that we've heard you correctly. Well, as I was saying, the analyst can add a paragraph and articulate the emotions that I expressed. I'm sure the analyst would find appropriate wording, more appropriate wording than the language I used earlier on.
Chuck.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to say that I think we are all united around the committee table in terms of understanding and recognizing how serious both of those issues are, both on the issue of bilingualism and also on the issue of making sure that departments respond to the requests of this committee. I do support Madame Vignola's sub amendment and request to have that included in the report. What I would put forward is an additional step, if it's okay, or intermediary step before we actually send the report to the House, is to give again the relevant departments, ministries, an opportunity to comply. And what I would suggest is that we explicitly state in the communication, what I'd like to see is a letter, correspondence to the ministries, informing them of our intent to bring this report to the House, so that the ministries understand that the committee is prepared to take the step to bring this forward directly to the House of Commons. And so that would give it would signal both, again, the seriousness of the situation, but it would also give the ministries a clear understanding of what our intent is and what we are prepared to do in terms of the next step. But it also gives them an opportunity to comply as well too. So I think it's an added step. It's responsible. It's pragmatic, and again, it clearly communicates to the departments how seriously we're taking this, and it clearly signals what is our intent to bring this issue up before the House, and it gives them a final opportunity to comply. And so I think that is, I think that is something that is sensible. And so I wanted to bring that forward for the committee's consideration.
Great. I appreciate that, Mr. Kuzmierczak. We are discussing, though, the amendment to Mr. Barrett's. We can deal with that and then come back to you for that. But it's kind of off the issue of the amendment. Mr. Johns, go ahead.
Well, first, the documents shouldn't be showing up here unless they're in both official languages. So that's, I'm sorry as well, like that this is not acceptable. I guess we've already extended this thing and it's been drawn out. So what is Mr. Kuzmierczak proposing, like, in terms of how much more time are you hoping to give him? We've given him a month. Like, are you talking like a few days, or are you talking like what does this look like?
2 weeks. And, sorry. Yeah, my suggestion would be 2 weeks. But in that case, I just want them to be fully informed of what our intents are, what our next steps are, and so that they comply with this request. Gives them an opportunity. Final one.
Can we just, appreciate that, Mr. Johns. Mr. Kuzmierczak, I appreciate the feedback. We really need to move back to the motion at hand. Mr. Barrett?
Well, if we can address the two motions that are on the table, the sub-amendment and the amendment, that's great. And then
I would suggest we do that, address the amendment, and then we can go back. So on the sub-amendment that Mrs. Vinola put forward, I kind of sense we're all in favor. Thank you. On the original, on the motion as amended. Are we voting? Yeah. Yes? Anyone against? We're voting on.
We voted on Ms. Vinola's.
And now we're voting on the motion
Mr.
as
Barrett.
amended.
But I want to come back, Mr. Chair. I have no objection if we're actually referring the matter to the House to adding the language that Mr. Barrett proposed, but I want to make sure that Mr. Kuzmierczak's suggestion, and it was sort of similar to what I had said before, that this go back to the departments with the letter from you, which the House isn't sitting for 2 weeks, so giving them the 2 extra weeks before the House resumes, before referring it to the House seems normal. I want to understand how that would be voted on.
And letting them know that this is our next step.
Yeah.
I think we have to clear that before we can get to Mr. Kuzmierczak's suggestion.
But I just want to make sure it's not unreceivable at the point that we adopt the wording from Mr. Barrett, which says that we're referring it, that this is the House. Like, I just want to make sure that by adding those words, we're not putting ourselves in a position that we cannot say, but it's a precursor to this would be doing this, because then the report would have to change, obviously.
Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but no, it doesn't. We accept the sub-amendment. We vote on the original. Mr. Housefather, we've lost you. Vote on the original, but that's not the vote to send it to the House. Correct? Yeah.
Can we just read it then back again, Michael? Yes.
The right to institute inquiries and demand papers is one of the privileges of the House of Commons as a collectivity. Accordingly, the committee wishes to draw the attention of the House on what appears to be a breach of its privileges and or a possible case of contempt of Parliament, and recommends the House to take measures it deems appropriate.
So agreeing to this is not sending it to the House, the report to the House. Are we fine on that then? We can move forward? I see that's the will of the committee. Mr. Barrett?
So it's really important, I think, based on the time period that we're not going to be here, if we're going to be hung up on giving a fifth or sixth opportunity or whatever it is for the departments, and signal an awareness that if the committee wants to give that direction, I think that we should also have a trigger point, and so that any departments who have not provided the documents in accordance with the order of the committee by the date that the committee decides, let's say April 10th, just by April 10th, that the report is referred to the House. And so then every department's got another opportunity, and then anyone who has failed to comply, then the House is notified. Just looking for a compromise before we run out of time, Chair.
Do you mind just repeating that? Clerk and I were conferring about one last thing. We have to make a change on this, and I'll bring that up after you.
Yeah. So my suggestion, Chair, was not worded as a motion, but Mr. Kusmarchuk and Housefather had asked if the departments could have more time. And just in the interest of getting this resolved, that the committee set a date, let's say it was 2 weeks from today, which would be April 12th, that any respondents who have not complied with the committee order by April 12th, that the report be referred to the House that the report be referred to the House. So something to that effect.
And that actually cleans up the language I was going to suggest. But go ahead, Mr. Kusmarchuk.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate actually my colleague compromising on this issue, trying to find an accommodation. I'm just wondering, the 10th of April, we won't be sitting obviously here as a House. We won't be here in committee. Would my colleague entertain the possibility of simply having a meeting, allowing us to have a meeting as a committee on the Monday when we come back, the 17th? At that point, we will see what is the status of our ultimate request, and then making that decision at that point. It just allows us to get information, to see what the final situation is. I just don't feel comfortable if we're making this decision, a trigger point happens when we're not sitting, and we are not aware in terms of what is the status of that request. So would my colleague accept the fact that we simply make that decision on the 17th? And I think you would get unanimous support behind that motion. And again, it underscores just how serious this issue really is.
So, in fairness, we were looking for this to happen today. We've given the departments multiple chances, giving them another 2-week period to comply. I mean, coming back, if everyone says that it's inappropriate for departments not to comply with an order of the committee, that will be true tomorrow, and it was true yesterday. So if we're just giving a second and third chance, there's no more information that they can provide. They must provide the documents unredacted. So if this is simply a misunderstanding and they didn't realize that we were going to refer to the House, well, now they know. And so us coming back and burning more time on it, nothing will have changed between today and then. This is, just to be clear, I think that referring this to the House is overdue. I think that we promote what we permit, and so by not having dealt with this already, we're encouraging more bad behavior. And so I think that the time is nigh. But if it gave comfort to other people or other members of the committee that a week was sufficient, 2 weeks drew disorder from some of my colleagues saying that was too long. So I don't think that we need to come back to when we're sitting. Then the first day the House is back, then the chair of the committee has the opportunity to inform the House. I think that that's reasonable.
Mrs. Manola?
I'm being very patient. I usually am very patient. But now I'm really starting to wonder how many slaps in the face are we going to put up with from departments before we say enough is enough? Because right now, I think we're being treated as a doormat, and I don't like it. So you can vote for yet another compromise if you want. Which compromise would that be? Third, fourth? I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, usually I'm someone who looks for compromises, but I'm not compromising this time. No compromise. This has to go to the House because enough is enough.
Mr. Shouri?
Thank you. So, Madam Vignola, we are 100% supporting the addition of the language that you talked about in the report. And I think regardless, and that will be communicated one way or another. What I would like to suggest to my colleagues is let's keep the date of 12 and let's have the subcommittee meet on the 12th for 10 or 15 minutes to ensure, via Zoom, to ensure that, we are ready to send this out to the House, or no, we are not. And then that upon the outcome of the subcommittee meeting, we could decide to move forward.
Yeah. The subcommittee can make recommendations, but it still has to be adopted on the 17th by us.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Mr. Kuzmierczak?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that absolutely we support both pillars of the motions that were brought forward here, the seriousness of the situation in terms of making sure that there is appropriate bilingual translation for all documents is absolutely critical. It's fundamental and it's foundational, not only to the work of this committee, but it is foundational to the work of all Canadians as a bilingual country. And at the same time, I absolutely do take seriously. I do take seriously the need for us to send a message to make sure that departments and ministries comply with our request to make sure that we see all the information that is unredacted. That was the original request that we had made. We're serious about that. But I do think that we're missing one step, which is sending a final letter to ministries and departments to make it clear to all ministries and departments what is our intent. And the intent of this committee is to send a report to the House of Commons underlying that certain fundamental rights have been breached of this committee. What I'd like to see, what I think would give that letter additional force and meaning, is again having unanimous support behind it, and making sure that we can say that that at every turn, at every step, the ministries and departments were informed of what our intent is, what our plan is, and were given every opportunity to comply with that request. And so the reason I'm just saying Monday, I know it's a couple days difference, but it does two things. One is it gives 10 business days. It gives 10 business days for the ministries to comply, which means at that point they have absolutely no excuse, and they know full well, with full knowledge, that they were not in compliance with the request, that they were in breach of the request. But it also gives this committee, an opportunity to sit. It gives this committee an opportunity to sit, to view the request, to view the request, to see which ministries actually did not comply, and discuss the outcome of this final correspondence in open session. for all to see. And I think that's what it does, is it provides maximum accountability. It provides maximum transparency. It allows us to make that decision as a committee and hopefully unanimously to send a real strong message to the House that such practices are unacceptable. And I think there is unanimous support here, but I would like to give the ministries, again, like I said, it's 10 business days. The House is not sitting. We come back on Monday, we see what the results of that letter is, and then we make that decision unanimously as a committee. And I think that would only highlight and emphasize the seriousness of this situation for all members of Parliament, all committees, and for the House of Commons. So I just ask, and again, I want to recognize the flexibility.
Can I interrupt for a sec?
Of my colleague, but I just want to emphasize, if we can just make that small accommodation, I think you're going to see unanimous support for your motion.
I'm going to interject. I'll give you back the floor,
Sure.
but just very quickly, I'm seeking everyone's permission to get the analyst formatting ability to make format changes and contextual info on the motion. I'm sure we all agree to that. Just very quickly, and I apologize, we are running out of resource. Mr. John has to leave. Can we finish this up real quick?
Mr. Johns, please.
I think from what my understanding is, and I'm having some conversations over here, and this is like that we're willing to support Mr. Barrett's proposal here, reluctantly, like very reluctantly, given that Ms. Vignola has been violated in terms of her privilege, you know, and I think that if we can all just agree to support what Mr. Barrett's putting forward here, we can carry on, and it's a compromise, you know, that he's put forward.
For sure. I'm just asking Monday is all I'm asking. That's it. Like, we would support that 100%, and you'll have unanimous support. So,
I'm sorry. The one thing that is different, I think, is not necessarily the date. It's the fact that the committee will be unaware on the 12th of what happened, right? Sorry?
Because you don't get emails.
Right. I don't know how to read email. That's exactly it. Yes. No, it's the fact that we wouldn't have the opportunity to discuss it, and we'd just have to take somebody's word for what was there. I believe that it is important that we come back to the committee and have an understanding at the committee of what has happened over that period of time, who has complied, who has not complied, and then I'm fine to go ahead, but I want to know.
Today.
It's turning into.
It's not.
And I will,
Mr. Chair,
I'll turn the floor.
Compromise has been offered, a full-on compromise, which, you know what, we should just vote down. I'm prepared to vote against my own motion. Just vote for this to go to the House right away. This was offered in good faith. And then to have another meeting, to have an additional meeting to discuss this issue, like if we take the issue of Ms. Vignola and other members' privilege seriously, if we take the issue of this committee's privilege seriously, it should be referred to the House forthwith. Delaying is simply to expedite this and to remove any doubt on whether or not there was a filibuster, but it looks like we're just going to talk it out. If this thing doesn't come to a vote before we run out of resources, it's because government members did not want this to come to a vote.
Mr. Kusmirchuk?
No, Mr. Chair. I mean, that is misrepresenting our position here. We are in support. We are in support. Absolutely, in terms of recognizing the seriousness of this situation, both on the language issue and also on the issue of making sure that when the committee asks ministries to bring forward unredacted information, that the information comes back unredacted. What we are simply proposing is that we send a penultimate letter to the ministries and the departments, the relevant ones, the ones that have not responded to what it is our request, to let them know that it is our intent to send, if they do not comply within 10 business days, we will send a report to the House of Commons. And so that's what we're asking, is that step. And what we're asking for is simply that we can convene as a committee on the Monday when we return from the Easter break, so that we fully can understand which departments have and have not responded. We can discuss it, and then we can come to a vote and come to a vote and unanimously to support that motion. If that is in fact the case, if there are ministries or departments that have not complied with our request. And I think that is a pragmatic step. It's a sensible step. It gives the ministries clarity in terms of what we expect, gives them clarity in terms of what is our game plan. And at that point, if they don't comply, the seriousness of that is what we will convey to the House of Commons, and there will be no shred of doubt that they had a full understanding of what is our intent and how seriously we take this situation. And so all I'm asking for is really a difference of 5 days so that this committee has the opportunity to convene and see what is the status of our ultimate request to the ministries and departments that are not in compliance. That's all we're asking for, giving them 10 business days. And so again, I absolutely respect and I acknowledge my honorable colleague for being flexible. I ask for a little bit of flexibility on this. And I think it will only strengthen our position moving forward in terms of what we want to, the message that we want to send and the report that we want to send to the House of Commons. And so that's what I'm asking for at this point. A little bit of flexibility, and we're ready to vote on it today.
Can we move to a vote, colleagues? Perfect. Clerk? We'll move to a vote.
Are we voting for moving it to the House now, or
On we've adopted your sub-amendment.
just
Mr.
on this
Barrett's
motion?
amendment to move to the House.
Well, can
Send
I
to the
put
House.
forward
To
a
the House?
sub-amendment? Is it possible to put forward a sub-amendment at this point then?
I think we've already moved past that. You gave up the floor, and I've heard call to a vote, so I didn't see anyone else on the speaking list.
Because Marisak was clear. So what are we voting on?
Yeah. We've accepted the sub-amendment from Mrs. Vinola. We've accepted Mr. Barrett's, and it was to vote to move it to the House. Mr.
No,
Johns?
sorry. That was not, that we're definitely not at a point where we voted to move it to the House. Mr. Barrett put on the floor giving them an extension till the 12th of April. You made a suggestion. So then that's fine. Yeah. Then if it wasn't a motion, then we should be bringing forward a motion as to what we want, but as to amend the thing. But there was nowhere where we said it was just going to go to a vote to refer it to the House.
Sorry, 2 seconds. You're not. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I can speak from here. Sorry, just bear with me 2 seconds. Here, I'll make you feel better.
Mr. Chair, point of order, time on this. Like, I've got to be in the House in 1 minute.
I realize that,
or I lose my
Johns,
speaking spot.
But we do have our committee, and we are continuing. And that may be the case. You may lose your spot, I'm afraid. Sorry, colleagues, we were at Mr. Barrett's amendment, which was 2 weeks from today, April 12th. Clerk will further correspond to the departments to have them comply with an order from the committee. Those who don't submit it 2 weeks will be reported to the House.
Okay.
Are we comfortable with that?
Okay.
Motion?
So you've received that as a motion?
That was from your original. That was from your amendment.
And there.
Are you ready for that?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I made it clear that I wanted to bring forward an amendment, and I yielded the floor to Mr. Johns because I assumed that we were coming to a compromise, and so
we are losing our interpreters. I am going to adjourn the meeting, and we will.
It's a filibuster. You guys filibustered it. Brutal. That's brutal.